Let's bring in dperry, the former editor of the Associated Press in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. He's also the publisher of Ask Questions Later on Substack and is joining us from Tel Aviv. Mr. Perry, on the surface, thank you for joining us, by the way. On the surface, this looks like a pretty successful grip and grin, but there's already some commentary that this was a deliberate attempt to paper over a relationship that's increasingly under pressure, and I'm wondering about your thoughts on that. Inherent disagreements about how to progress that ceasefire, how to deal with the West Bank, how to deal with Syria, for example.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the impending blow-up between Netanyahu and Trump, and they've been disappointed so far. I myself had expected Trump to be more resolute on a lot of the issues at hand, but what we saw yesterday was an effort to indeed present a united front. There's no question Netanyahu got quite a bit. He got a pretty clear statement from Trump that Hamas has to disarm, although Trump was wobbly about whether if Hamas doesn't, that would completely block reconstruction. It was implied, but not stated. And Israel would like that to be the case. Netanyahu also got a lot on Iran. Trump basically pretty much authorized an Israeli strike on the ballistic missile program and promised to that the U.S. would strike itself if they discovered that the nuclear program was being rebuilt. And beyond that, Netanyahu could hardly have scripted a better campaign advertisement than Trump declaring him a war hero, saying absurdly that Israel would not exist if not for Netanyahu, and again, using that stage to call for a pardon for Netanyahu, basically a halt to his bribery trial. So I think it was a pretty good meeting for Netanyahu, even though, sure, some daylight remains on whether Turkey should be allowed to participate in the force in Gaza, and some lack of clarity about exactly how they're going to achieve that which they both want, and which I think anyone of good faith in the Arab world wants, which is a disarming of Hamas and a release by Hamas of Gaza.
When we look at that Gaza ceasefire deal, Donald Trump seems pretty keen to push it through to stage 2. Is that, though, in Israel's best interests?
Oh, it's in everyone's best interest as long as it's the entirety of Phase 2. Phase 2 would call for Israel to further pull out. It would call for massive reconstruction. It would call for the beginning of a process that might lead to a Palestinian state. All these things are, I believe, in the interest of Gazans and Palestinians and Israelis and all Arabs. But I have assessed from the beginning that nothing will happen. Everything will be blocked, including reconstruction. Unless Hamas steps aside and disarms in some way that is real and probably has its leaders go into exile. I've been saying this for 2 years, and so far I have not been proven wrong. How to bring it about is an open question, and I really do believe that it is incumbent on the Arab League, which called on Hamas to disarm back in July, with the support of Qatar, for all these countries to make it very clear to Hamas that the Palestinians face a real fork in the road. Down one way lies real reconstruction, massive, colossal aid, a pathway to a better future that might include a version of statehood, albeit I do believe demilitarized. And the other way lies Gaza receiving minimal humanitarian aid and continuing to lie in ruins, or at least any part of Gaza, about the half of Gaza, the interior, where most Gazans live, which Hamas continues to control, will continue to lie in ruins, as we see on screen. None of that will be rebuilt because Israel, and I kind of think rightly, will prevent construction materials going in. And I think Egypt will, and the world will, as long as Hamas is there. And there is a very real prospect, indeed, the near certainty that that material will be commandeered and used to build tunnels and weapons factories.
Okay. I'm wondering if I can grab some quick final thoughts from you, particularly because you raised this as an election campaign ad. Has Netanyahu got the assurances he needs? Bearing in mind, you've got to think meetings like this and every single meeting between now and the next election is, in fact, a litmus test for his status and standing with the United States.
Yeah, I think it did, to a degree that is ridiculous. And I think many things were said that were false. Israel would certainly not only continue to exist without Netanyahu, would be in much better shape without Netanyahu. Netanyahu was blocking the removal of Hamas in a way by preventing any discussion of the Palestinian Authority taking over, which is the only other brand. It needs reforms and it needs improvements. But Israel actually, in a weird way, is prolonging the rule of Hamas in Gaza. But as for his election campaign, you can't do much better than Trump saying the country wouldn't exist without you and that you're a war hero. And Netanyahu, to a very great extent, has to tolerate whatever differences there may be with Trump. And I repeat, he did get quite a bit that is real, because he's received this spectacular electoral gift, basically unprecedented in U.S. Israeli history and kind of globally, because the U.S. interfering to this degree in another country's electoral process, it was unheard of before Trump. He did similar in Poland, of course, and in other countries in various ways, but this was quite extreme and almost eye-popping.
Yeah, all right. A story with obviously more to come. Dan, thank you very much for your thoughts. Dan Perry, former editor of the Associated Press in Europe, Middle East and Africa and publisher of Ask Questions Later.